what are some of the steps you're going through when you're launching a podcast to be like, hey man, we've got to dial in this wireframe for success, or you're just going to be speaking into the wind with nobody hearing you, which is not fun when you're putting your soul out there on a podcast and then you're like, oh, 2 people listened. I guess this is just part of the process.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And it is part of the process, and it's also systemic because podcasts are one of the few platforms where you can't really rely on the platform to do your marketing, in the sense that if you post on YouTube, after a while, YouTube will start to promote and share your stuff to other people who might like it. Same thing with TikTok. They do that. Actually, it's YouTube waits till the end. You have to put a ton of videos on YouTube and then they start to promote you. TikTok, it's kind of the reverse, where they want to give you that quick little hit at the beginning. And so the point is that you can create content and you can almost expect that if it's good enough, people will find it. With podcasting, that's not quite the case. Spotify, if your audience is younger, Spotify is doing some work right now to kind of fix that. But otherwise, you do have to drive all of the promotion. And I think that that's a big reason why people's expectations aren't met, right? Because they don't do that. And we have stolen a lot of our strategies from Hal's book launch kind of stuff, in the sense that we call it an advanced listener team, and we're getting people if it hasn't launched yet, we're getting them excited to do something on the launch. We also find that contests and giveaways are really, really helpful to be able to do that, giving people swag. There are podcast tech has kind of evolved a little bit, where you can do some cool things with contests and giveaways to get people to go and download and listen to your stuff. Those are really helpful. And then we've also found that feedback we call it a feedback campaign, but it's basically just asking people to listen and give you feedback. We found that if your show is good enough, when they're listening for feedback, they'll keep listening, right? And so it's kind of this foot in the door to kind of get them down the rabbit hole. But we found that, and you can do that a variety of different ways. You can have a form, you can just do it, through conversations or whatever it is, but asking people to, getting that qualitative data back from your listeners also strangely encourages them to go down the rabbit hole, and they also feel like they're part of it a little more. So we found those things to help get people involved when they're not.
Yeah, we Chris and I, this thing has been coming through my Instagram recently. You must have recognized that I do a podcast, because it's like, get your podcast into the top 10, book a call. Get your podcast in the top 10, book a call. So finally, it's like, all right, their funnel looks pretty slick. Their Instagram ads look pretty good. I'll give it a shot. So Chris and I did an exploratory call yesterday, I think it was. We were on for about 45 minutes. And, it was kind of initial sales / consult. We'll send you the follow-up information. And if you want to give us $6,000, give us $6,000 or what, And I was appreciative that they weren't particularly pushy. I think the company's called Top 10 Podcasts or something like that. Anyway, I digress. But one of the things that they were really bullish on is they're like, hey, man, you've got to build an email list. And the best way to do that is promotions. They're like, some of the smaller sites can give away an Xbox or a signed DVD copy if you're like a movie YouTube channel or whatever. But, between channel and your pocket, you really should be driving some type of contest to capture emails and build that audience where it's like, hey, subscribe, send me your email, and make a comment on one of our YouTube videos, and we'll put you in a drawing. And that feels so inauthentic to me, of like, hey guys, I'm just going to pretend like I'm rich and that I have $2,500 to give out for a campaign. But then I also know that it works. So what are the uncomfortable things that you've got to get your podcasting clients over, where it's like, hey, Scott, I know this feels weird. I know maybe you don't want to say this or do this or have that segment or do this thing. And I'm going to make you do it because I know it works.
Yeah. Well, it comes back to the end, right? Because we had a really, I don't want to say it was a big show. Well, excuse me. It was a really big show that almost, how do I say this? There was a show that was doing close to 100,000 downloads a month that they essentially killed because they didn't have a way, there was no connection to revenue, right? So a lot of people were listening, but it didn't mean dick because they didn't connect it to anything. And so the challenge with something like that is, like, when you give away, for sure, are people going to go crazy for, AirPods or whatever? Like, do those things work? Like, absolutely. Do they move the numbers? Absolutely. The challenge is that you look up and you got 2,000 email addresses of a bunch of people who were couldn't afford to buy themselves AirPods. You know what I mean? And so like, if your end goal is to now all of a sudden sell those people dick pills, well, for sure, you've got something going there. You know what I mean? In the sense that like, if the end goal is like, you know, we're just trying to build this list, trying to build awareness so that we can show people that we have people looking, like, yeah, there's a strategy there. And I don't want to, I'm coming at it with a tone of condescension, and I don't want to bring that judgment to it, because it's, you know, it's a totally valid business model. Whereas the challenge is if someone like you all of a sudden has those emails and then are now expecting them to turn into, I don't know,
home buyers in Southern California,
right, whatever it, you know, you've got, that's not it. And so it's kind of when do you want to pay the piper, right? And so what we found is like in those instances, people offering freebies, right, or offering doing some sort of contest, but making it relevant, I think, is much more important. And so but people fucking love AirPods and iPhones, and they will do almost anything for them.